Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm in Michigan.
And I'm Randall here in Texas. Today we're going to talk about a movie that's celebrating its 20th anniversary. So that means it came out in the year 2000, Titan AE. It's a movie that I'm ridiculously nostalgic for, personally, but Matt had never seen. So I'm super curious to know what Matt thinks of Titan AE, not having watched it before now.
Well, I think it is an okay sci-fi film, but to me, it's a little too familiar. Nothing really stuck out to me. A lot of the different themes of the movie, how characters interacted, and the decisions they made in this movie all kind of felt a little familiar. I'd kind of seen a lot of films similar to this without actually seeing this movie.
Yes, you have. You absolutely have. There's more than one reason for that. Number one, this is my favorite remake of Treasure Island. Because that's all it is. This is Treasure Island, Matt. And Disney made a movie around the same time, 1999, 2000-ish, Treasure Planet, which is, it's the same. And then they had the Muppet Treasure Island, which I love. My wife doesn't like it so much. So that's one of the reasons why it's incredibly familiar, because it really is just Treasure Island. The other reason, and this one might be a little more subtle to some people, is who made it, who's responsible for Titan AE, and that's Don Bluth. I have a whole list that I can't memorize this quickly, and I'm going to go over it, but people our age who were watching animation growing up, and even older than us, people in the 60s and 70s, our parents who were watching Disney animation, completely watched Don Bluth. Here's some of the movies he was either a director of or an animator on. Robin Hood, Disney, classic. The Land Before Time, The Fox and the Hound, Pete's Dragon, The Rescuers, The Secret of NIMH, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Anastasia, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. These are just some examples of your childhood wouldn't have been the same without his influence on movies. And sometime in the 1980s, he was working for Disney, and basically Disney wasn't doing so in the animation things. And he broke off and made his own company. That's when you start seeing some of these edgier films like Titan AE. That's, even if you don't think about it, your brain's like, hey, there's something here that's familiar.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely I was thinking like, hey, even where it's like, all right, this guy's job, this kind of reminds me of Rey in like the new Star Wars films, and just how kind of like, hey, I feel abandoned by my father, and, I'm looking for, purpose and everything. And even the big surprise, I think, near the end of the movie, of someone who you think is good turns out to be bad, but then gets a redemption later. That all felt, kind of real familiar to me about this movie. I had to try to remind myself this was aimed towards like teens and stuff. As being like an adult now, I'm kind of looking at the film like, all right, but once I, started looking at it as a teen, especially a teen in the early 2000s, I'm actually disappointed that I didn't see this movie at that time as opposed to watching it now.
Yeah, so it's interesting that the teen thing, because you look at the music that's in this movie, and now it maybe doesn't fit quite as well because you're looking at it as an adult, especially an adult who hasn't watched it, but it's a lot of like pop punk kind of music, but it's the music that was popular with teenagers and young adults at the time, your Blink-182, your Sum 41, your Newfound Glory kind of tracks. That's the kind of music that's in this movie because that's the kind of music that was popular at the time. Even if it didn't fit perfect with the movie or the scene that they were moving with all the time, it was just, hey, this is what kids like. Here's something that kids like.
You hit that right on the head. I was thinking that exactly as I was watching the film. It's like, wow, this movie definitely is dated with the music kind of thing. Almost like a Matrix feel. And like you said, sometimes the music didn't necessarily fit with the scene, but it went in.
There's one scene in particular though where the music does nail it. Even today, it works. Where Corso lets the Corso's the main captain, by the way, who ends up being a bad guy, but then redemption story. But he lets the character just kind of take his ship and fly, and that music scene really works fantastic. Where they're flying through the nebula, that one still works.
One thing I would say, you're talking about, the captain and said his name. That's one thing I feel bad about, even after just watching the film. I don't really remember any of the characters' names in this movie. I know him. I didn't even know, Captain Cursor. I just knew him as Captain. So, that's, one thing about this thing is there's some good characters, especially among the crew. You have the scientists and stuff and the weapon specialists. They're actually good characters, but I feel bad. Like you said, I don't actually remember their names in this film.
There's actually a lot, and this is a fun thing. As we look back on some of these older films, we're going to start seeing some casts, which I call stacked casts. This one is a real interesting one because even in the year 2000, it was probably a pretty stacked cast. Ron Perlman is a voice actor in this. Bill Pullman is a primary voice actor in this. Matt Damon is a primary voice actor. John Leguizamo. And there's one I know I'm missing. Nathan Lane.
Isn't Drew Barrymore also in this one as well?
Oh, good lord. Yes, Drew Barrymore. Yes, Drew Barrymore plays the main female antagonist, or not antagonist, protagonist. And yes, it's crazy the amount of voice acting talent in this movie.
Yeah, especially like Matt Damon and stuff at the time. Though it was kind of weird, like watching it. I don't know if I think it was kind of like the character. But I almost was thinking, like, Owen Wilson could have played this role, too. And I would have believed that as well.
And I would have, probably, especially, 4 years earlier, he does Armageddon. for his short stint. Spoiler alerts, Owen Wilson doesn't make it. But another thing that I liked about this, not so much now. If I look at it now, I think it's kind of clunky. But when I watched it, it's one of those really first movies that does a lot of CGI and animation, and there's scenes where it's kind of clunky, where you're like, okay, well, it's animated moving across the CGI background, and it's kind of not quite right. But at the time, in the year 2000, that was pretty new and revolutionary for a major animated film. You didn't have very much of that going on yet.
Yeah, one thing I would say is kind of like the ships, maybe like the alien ships. Sometimes they felt a little static to me. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, movies, it is a static item that, cameras are moving around and stuff. But, this even like animated, it kind of, I don't know, the ships to me didn't feel like they were like developed in the world or whatever. They're just kind of like, moving and then the scene kind of moving, which, it's how movies are done anyways, but.
Which honestly they probably were though. Like they weren't at the level yet. They hadn't really, outside of Pixar, done just massive, crazy CGI in animation. Even Phantom Menace, which was a huge blockbuster in 1999, you go back and watch that special effects, those CGI, and you're like, ugh, some of the times. So at the time, it was pretty good though. I am glad you brought up the alien threat there, the dredge. Because looking at it now, I realized, why did the dredge hate us so much?
They don't like that humans are being able to make planets, I guess.
They don't like that we've designed a Genesis device. I get that. But, Well,
that's the thing, too. The movie brings that up, too. And then, the characters themselves question. They're like, why do they hate us so much? And the explanation is kind of like, well, they fear like what we might do with it, kind of thing. So it's
which is the same thing that the Q Continuum fears about humans in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah.
It's if you haven't seen it, you should watch Star Trek: The Next Generation. At least some of the Q episodes, and you get that, like you fear what we might become. And that's interesting. But I would like to say, like, as the dredge, the alien, they're pure electricity almost to a point, which ends up being a really big point at the end of the movie when when everything gets activated, when the Titan gets activated to make New Earth. But it's a really interesting alien design. You don't see it in anything else. I really enjoy the dredge because they are so alien.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something new. Something also I really liked about this movie was the different like planets and locales and stuff. I actually liked it. The Bat Planet or whatever, one of the first planets that they go to try to find the Titan, that was really cool. You know, even where they find the Titan in like the, I don't know, it's almost like a crystallized asteroid field kind of, thing. That is really cool.
It's fun because the characters, it's basically like ice. It's like a accretion disk of ice. Um, and the character's like, oh, it's a perfect spot to hide. I'm like, no, it's a perfect spot to build.
Yeah. Which
You know?
is what ends up happening, yes. Yeah.
like he didn't put it there because it was a perfect spot to hide it. He put it there because it had all of the raw components that were required to put a planet together, to create a star and put a planet together. Well, probably it's an accretion disk. The star's already there. But, it has all the raw materials that are necessary to do what the Titan was designed to do. Make a new planet.
Yeah, I think there's some really good sci-fi elements in this movie. Some of the things though that didn't kind of work with me, the kind of the love interest between the two of them, I kind of wrote it off to, well, humans are almost extinct, so there's two of the last teenagers, alive, and they're at that age too, 19, 20 years old or whatever. I don't know. To me, it was just kind of, it's like, oh, I saw him naked. Oh, he saw me naked. And they're all okay with that through the whole thing. I don't know. It was kind of weird. Notice that thing if you get shot in like the arm or maybe the leg something, how you have to be naked to get surgery to be healed. That's kind of how it goes. My arm is wounded. I gotta strip down naked.
They had to make sure that the rest of him was fine, not just, fine. But overall, I'm nostalgic for this film, so I sat down and I really still enjoyed it. It does bother me that the primary antagonists, the Dredge, don't really have any real motivation other than, oh, the humans have the power to make a new world. Why do you care? But I still like the movie overall. It still works for me. And I'm interested to know what other people think about it. Again, especially people who haven't seen it before.
Yeah, like I said, I liked it for the most part. It was a little too familiar for me. I don't know that I would go out and say, hey, if you haven't seen it, you gotta go see this one. But, it's an interesting thing, and, if you get past saying, like, it's definitely a movie of its time, I don't know that it's a movie that would be really big if it came out today as is. If you make, a couple, tweaks and stuff, it'd feel more in with the times.
Spoiler alert, it wasn't a very big movie in its day either. At that point in time, Disney had actually really upped their game through the 90s, making a lot of what Don Bluth was doing not so edgy, not so dramatic, so at that point. But it was great. He really tried to go toe-to-toe with Disney and did for a while. And having been one of their previous animators, it's fantastic to watch, I think, personally. So, I think it's worth it if you're a big sci-fi fan for sure, though. It's got a lot of really cool science fiction elements, like you said.
Yep, for sure. Sci-fi fan, go check it out. We're going to be doing more videos like this, looking back at stuff that came out in 2000. But first, before you watch those, if you like this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to that other content that's coming out. For now, I'm Matt in Michigan. See you guys.
And I'm Randall in Texas. Everyone have a great day.